Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Hi, Osama. Thank you for watching. Let's see. Welcome to Readings in Isolation. My name is Saman Giraud for those of you who are joining us tonight for the first time. I will pick up the story where Joanna left off. This is what we usually do. We split every night, and this is the 25th night, and it's the story of the Hunchback. All right, there you go. Enjoy the reading. When it was the 25th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the tailor's wife gave the hunchback that mouthful of fish which ended his term of days, he died on the instant. Seeing this, the tailor cried aloud, 'There is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah. Alas, that this poor wretch should have died in so foolish fashion at our hands.' And the woman rejoined, 'Why this idle talk? Hast thou not heard his saying who said, why then waste I my time in grief until I find no friend to bear my weight of woe? How sleep upon a fire that flames unquenched, upon the flames to rest were hard enow?' Asked her husband, 'And what shall I do with him?' And she answered, 'Rise, and take him in thine arms, and spread a silken kerchief over him, that I will fare forth with thee following me this very night. And if thou meet any one, say, This is my son, and his mother and I are carrying him to the doctor, that he may look at him.' So he rose, and taking the hunchback in his arms, bore him along the streets, preceded by his wife, who kept crying, 'O my son, Allah keep thee! What part paineth thee, and where hath this smallpox attacked thee?' So all who saw them said, ''Tis a child sick of smallpox.' They went along, asking for the physician's house, till folk directed them to that of a leech which was a Jew. They knocked at the door, and there came down to them a black slave girl, who opened, and seeing a man bearing a babe, and a woman with him, said to them, 'What is the matter?' 'We have a little one with us,' answered the tailor, 'and we wish to show him to the physician. So take this quarter dinar and give it to thy master, and let him come down and see my son, who is sore sick.' The girl went up to tell her master, whereupon the tailor's wife walked into the vestibule and said to her husband, 'Leave the hunchback here, and let us fly for our lives.' So the tailor carried the dead man to the top of the stairs and propped him upright against the wall and ran away, he and his wife. Meanwhile, the girl went in to the Jew and said to him, 'At the door are a man and a woman with a sick child, and they have given me a quarter dinar for thee, that thou mayest go down and look at the little one and prescribe for it.' As soon as the Jew saw the quarter dinar, he rejoiced and went forth hurriedly in the dark. But hardly had he made a step when he stumbled on the corpse and threw it over, when it rolled to the bottom of the staircase. So he cried out to the girl to hurry up with the light, and she brought it, whereupon he went down, and examining the hunchback, found that he was stone dead. So he cried out, 'O for Esdras, O for Moses, O for Aaron, O for Joshua, son of Nun.'" "O the 10 Commandments, I have stumbled against the sick one, and he hath fallen downstairs, and he is dead. How shall I get this man I have killed out of my house? Or by the hoofs of the ass of Esdras? Then he took up the body and, carrying it into the house, told his wife what had happened. And she said to him, "Why dost thou sit still? If thou keep him here till daybreak, we shall both lose our lives. Let us too carry him to the terrace roof and throw him over into the house of our neighbor, the Moslem. For if he abide there a night, the dogs will come down on him from the adjoining terraces and eat him up." Now his neighbor was a reeve, the controller of the Sultan's kitchen, and was wont to bring back great store of oil and fat and broken meats. But the cats and rats used to eat it, or, if the dogs scented a fat sheep's tail, they would come down from the nearest roofs and tear at it. And on this wise the beasts had already damaged much of what he brought home. So the Jew and his wife carried the hunchback up to the roof and, letting him down by his hands and feet through the windshaft into the reeve's house, propped him up against the wall and went their ways. Hardly had they done this when the reeve, who had been passing an evening with his friends hearing a recitation of the Quran, came home and opened the door and, going up with a lighted candle, found a son of Adam standing in the corner under the ventilator. When he saw this, he said, "Wah! By Allah, very good forsooth, he who robbeth my stuff is none other than a man." Then he turned to the hunchback and said, "So 'tis thou that stealest the meat and the fat. I thought it was the cats and dogs, and I kill the dogs and cats of the quarter and sin against them by killing them. And all the while, 'tis thou comest down from the house terrace through the windshaft. But I will avenge myself upon thee with my own hand." So he snatched up a heavy hammer and set upon him and smote him full on the breast, and he fell down. Then he examined him and, finding that he was dead, cried out in horror, thinking he had killed him, and said, "There is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious, the great." And he feared for his life and added, "Allah curse the oil and the meat and the grease and the sheep's tails to boot. How hath fate given this man his quietus at my hand?" Then he looked at the body, and seeing it was that of a gobbo, said, "Was it not enough for thee to be a hunchback? But thou must likewise be a thief, and prick flesh and fat. O thou veiler, deign to veil me with thy curtain of concealment." So he took him up on his shoulders, and going forth with him from his house about the latter end of the night, carried him to the nearest end of the bazaar, where he set him up on his feet against the wall of a shop at the head of a dark lane, and left him and went away. After a while, up came a Nazarene, the Sultan's broker, who, much bemused with liquor, was purposing for the hammam bath, as his drunkenness whispered in his ear, "Verily, the call to matins is nigh." He came plodding along and staggering about, till he drew near the hunchback and squatted down to make water over against him, when he happened to glance around and saw a man standing against the wall. Now some person had snatched off the Christian's turban in the first of the night, so when he saw the hunchback hard by, he fancied that he also meant to steal his headdress. Thereupon he clenched his fist and struck him on the neck, felling him to the ground, and called aloud to the watchman of the bazaar, and came down on the body in his drunken fury and kept on belaboring and throttling the corpse. Presently the Charley came up and, finding a Nazarene kneeling on a Muslim and frapping him, asked, "What harm hath this one done?" And the broker answered, "The fellow meant to snatch off my turban." "Get up from him," quoth the watchman. So he arose, and the Charley went up to the hunchback, and finding him dead, exclaimed, "By Allah, good indeed, a Christian killing a Mohammedan." Then he seized the broker and, tying his hands behind his back, carried him to the governor's house. And all the while the Nazarene kept saying to himself, "O Messiah, O Virgin, how came I to kill this fellow? And in what a hurry he must have been to depart this life when he died of a single blow." Presently, as his drunkenness fled, came dolour in its stead. So the broker and the body were kept in the governor's place till morning morrowed, when the wali came out and gave orders to hang the supposed murderer, and commanded the executioner make proclamation of the sentence. Forthwith they set up a gallows, under which they made the Nazarene stand, and the torchbearer, who was hangman, threw the rope round his neck, and passed one end through the pulley, and was about to hoist him up, when lo! the reeve, who was passing by, saw the broker about to be hanged, and making his way through the people, cried out to the executioner, "Hold, hold! I am he who killed the hunchback." Asked the governor, "What made thee kill him?" And he answered, "I went home last night, and there found this man who had come down the ventilator to steal my property. So I smote him with a hammer on the breast, and he died forthright. Then I took him up and carried him to the bazaar, and set him up against the wall in such a place near such a lane," adding, "Is it not enough for me to have killed a Muslim without also killing a Christian? So hang none other but me." When the governor heard these words, he released the broker and said to the torchbearer, "Hang up this man on his own confession." So he loosed the cord from the Nazarene's neck and threw it round that of the reeve, and making him stand under the gallows tree, was about to string him up, when behold, the Jewish physician pushed through the people and shouted to the executioner, "Hold, hold! It was I and none else killed the hunchback. Last night I was sitting at home when a man and a woman knocked at the door carrying this gobbo who was sick, and gave my handmaid a quarter dinar, bidding her hand me the fee and tell me to come down and see him. Whilst she was gone, the man and the woman brought him into the house, and setting him on the stairs went away. And presently I came down, and not seeing him, for I was in the dark, stumbled over him, and he fell to the foot of the staircase and died on the moment. Then we took him up, I and my wife, and carried him on to the top terrace, and the house of this reeve being next door to mine, we let the body down through the ventilator. When he came home and found the hunchback in his house, he fancied he was a thief and struck him with a hammer, so that he fell to the ground, and our neighbor made certain that he had slain him. Now is it not enough for me to have killed one Muslim unwittingly, without burdening myself with taking the life of another Muslim wittingly?" When the governor heard this, he said to the hangman, "Set free the reeve and hang the Jew." Thereupon the torchbearer took him and slung the cord round his neck, when behold, the tailor pushed through the people and shouted to the executioner, "Hold, hold! It was I and none else killed the hunchback, and this was the fashion thereof. I had been out a-pleasuring yesterday, coming back to supper, fell in with this gobbo who was drunk and drumming away and singing lustily to his tambourine. So I accosted him and carried him to my house and bought a fish, and we sat down to eat. Presently my wife took a fit of fish, and making a gobbet of it, crammed it into his mouth. But some of it went down the wrong way, or stuck in his gullet, and he died on the instant. So we lifted him up, I and my wife, and carried him to the Jew's house, where the slave girl came down and opened the door to us, and I said to her, 'Tell thy master that there are a man and a woman, and a sick person for thee to see.' I gave her a quarter dinar, and she went up to tell her master, and whilst she was gone, I carried the hunchback to the head of the staircase and propped him up against the wall, and went off with my wife. When the Jew came down, he stumbled over him and thought that he had killed him. Then he asked the Jew, 'Is this the truth?' And the Jew answered, 'Yes.' Thereupon the tailor turned to the governor and said, 'Leave go the Jew and hang me.' When the governor heard the tailor's tale, he marveled at the matter of this hunchback and exclaimed, 'Verily, this is an adventure which should be recorded in books.' Then he said to the hangman, 'Let the Jew go and hang the tailor on his own confession.' The executioner took the tailor and put the rope around his neck and said, 'I am tired of such slow work. We bring out this one and change him for that other, and no one is hanged after all.' Now the hunchback in question was, they relayed, jester to the Sultan of China, who could not bear him out of his sight. So when the fellow got drunk and did not make his appearance that night or the next day till noon, the Sultan asked some of his courtiers about him, and they answered, 'O our lord, the governor hath come upon him dead, and hath ordered his murderer to be hanged. But as the hangman was about to hoist him up, there came a second, and a third, and a fourth, and each one said, It is I, and none else, killed the hunchback. And each gave a full and circumstantial account of the manner of the jester being killed. When the king heard this, he cried aloud to the chamberlain in waiting, 'Go down to the governor and bring me all four of them.' So the chamberlain went down at once to the place of execution, where he found the torchbearer on the point of hanging the tailor, and shouted to him, 'Hold, hold!' Then he gave the king's command to the governor, who took the tailor, the Jew, the Nazarene, and the reeve, the hunchback's body being borne on men's shoulders, and went up with one and all of them to the king. When he came into the presence, he kissed the ground and acquainted the ruler with the whole story, which it is needless to relate, for, as they say, there is no avail in a thrice told tale. The Sultan, hearing it, marveled and was moved to mirth, and commanded the story to be written in letters of liquid gold, saying to those present, 'Did ye ever hear a more wondrous tale than that of my hunchback?' Thereupon the Nazarene broker came forward and said, 'O King of the age, with thy leave I will tell thee a thing which happened to myself, and which is still more wondrous and marvellous and pleasurable and delectable than the tale of the hunchback.' Quoth the king, tell us what thou hast to say." So he began in these words. The Nazarene's broker's story. "O King of the age, I came to this, thy country, with merchandise, and destiny stayed me here with you. But my place of birth was Cairo in Egypt, where also was brought up. For I am one of the Copts, and my father was a broker before me. When I came to man's estate, he departed this life, and I succeeded to his business. One day, as I was sitting in my shop, behold, there came up to me a youth as handsome as could be, wearing sumptuous raiment and riding a fine ass. When he saw me, he saluted me, and I stood up to do him honor. Then he took out a kerchief containing a sample of sesame and asked, 'How much is this worth per ardab?' Whereto I answered, 100 dirhams. Quoth he, 'Take porters and gaugers and metasmen, and come tomorrow to the Khan al-Jawali by the gate of Victory Quarter, where thou wilt find me.' Then he fared forth, leaving with me the sample of sesame in his kerchief. And I went the round of any customers and ascertained that every ardab would fetch 120 dirhams. Next day I took 4 metasmen and walked with them to the Khan, where I found him awaiting me. As soon as he saw me, he rose and opened his magazine, when we measured the grain till the store was empty, and we found the contents 50 ardabs, making 5,000 pieces of silver. Then said he, 'Let 10 dirhams of every ardab be thy brokerage. So take the price and keep in deposit 4,500 dirhams for me. And when I have made an end of selling the other wares in my warehouses, I will come to thee and receive the amount.' 'I will well,' replied I, and kissing his hand went away, having made that day a profit of 1,000 dirhams. He was absent a month, at the end of which he came to me and asked, 'Where be the dirhams?' I rose and saluted him, and answered to him, 'Wilt thou not eat somewhat in my house?' But he refused with the remark, 'Get the monies ready, and I will presently return and take them.' Then he rode away. So I brought out the dirhams and sat down to await him, but he stayed away for another month, when he came back and said to me, 'Where be the dirhams?' I rose and saluting him asked, 'Wilt thou not eat something in my house?' But he again refused, adding, 'Get me the monies ready, and I will presently return and take them.' Then he rode off. So I brought out the dirhams and sat down to await his return, but he stayed away from me a 3rd month, and I said, 'Verily, this young man is liberately incarnate.' At the end of the month he came up, riding a mare mule and wearing a suit of sumptuous raiment. He was as the moon on the night of fullness, and he seemed as if fresh from the baths, with his cheeks rosy bright, and his brow flower white, and a mole spot like a grain of ambergris delighting the sight, even as was said of such as one by the poet. Full moon with sun in single mansion, in brightest sheen and fortune rose and shone, with happy splendor changing every sprite. Hail to what guerdons prayer with blissful boon. The charms and grace have gained perfection's height, all hearts have conquered and all wits have won. Laud to the Lord for works so wonder strange. What the Almighty wills, his hand hath done. When I saw him, I rose to him, and invoking blessings on him, asked, O my lord, wilt thou not take thy monies? Whence the hurry? Quoth he, wait till I have made an end of my business, and then I will come and take them. Again he rode away, and I said to myself, by Allah, when he comes next time, needs must I make him my guest, for I have traded with his dirhams, and have gotten large gains thereby. At the end of the year he came again, habited in a suit of clothes more sumptuous than the former. And when I conjured him by the Evangel to alight at my house and eat of my guest food, he said, I consent, on condition that what thou expendest on me shall be of my monies still in thy hands. I answered, so be it, and made him sit down whilst I got ready what was needful of meat and drink and else besides, and set the tray before him with the invitation, Bismillah. Then he drew near the tray and put out his left hand and ate with me, and I marvelled at his not using the right hand. When we had done eating, I put water on his hand and gave him wherewith to wipe it. Upon this we sat down to converse after I had set before him some sweetmeats, and I said to him, O my master, prithee relieve me by telling me why thou eatest with thy left hand. Perchance something aileth thy other hand? When he heard my words, he repeated these verses. Dear friend, ask not what burneth in my breast, lest thou see fiery pangs I never saw. Was not my heart to harbour Salma instead of Layla's love, but need hath never a law. And he put out his right arm from his sleeve, and behold, the hand was cut off, a wrist without a fist. I was astounded at this, but he said, marvel not, and think not that I ate with my left hand for conceit and insolence, but from necessity. And the cutting off my right hand was caused by an adventure of the strangest. Asked I, and what caused it? And he answered, know that I am of the sons of Baghdad, and my father was of notables of that city. When I came to man's estate, I heard the pilgrims and wayfarers, travellers and merchants talk of the land of Egypt, and their words sank deep into my mind, till my parents died, when I took a large sum of money and furnished myself for trade with stuffs of Baghdad and Mosul, and packing them up in bales, set out my wanderings. And Allah decreed me safety till I entered this, your city. Then he wept and began repeating, the blear-eyed escapes the pits, wherein the lynx-eyed fall. A word the wise man slays, and saves the natural. The Muslim fails of food, the Kafir feasts in hall. What art or act is man's? God's will obligeth all. Now when he had ended his verse, he said, so I entered Cairo, and took off my loads and stored my stuff in the Khan al-Masroor. Then I gave the servant a few silvers wherewith to buy me some food, and lay down to sleep a while. When I awoke, I went to the street called Bain al-Kasrain, between the two palaces, and presently returned and rested my night in the Khan. When it was morning, I opened a bale and took out some stuff, saying to myself, I will be off and go through some of the bazaars and see the state of the market. So I loaded the stuff on some of my slaves and fared forth till I reached the exchange of Jahakas, where the brokers who knew of my coming came to meet me. They took the stuffs and cried them for sale, but could not get the prime cost of them. I was vexed at this. However, the sheikh of the brokers said to me, O my lord, I will tell thee how thou mayest make a profit of thy goods. Thou shouldest do as the merchant do, and sell thy merchandise at credit for a fixed period, on a contract drawn upon by a notary, and duly witnessed, and employ a shroff to take their dues every Monday and Thursday. So shalt thou gain 2 dirhams and more for every one, and thou shalt solace and divert thyself by seeing Cairo and the Nile. Quoth I, this is sound advice, and carried the brokers to the Khan. They took my stuffs and went with them on change, where I sold them, well taking bonds for the value. These bonds I deposited with a shroff, a banker, who gave me a receipt with which I returned to the Khan. Here I stayed a whole month, every morning breaking my fast with a cup of wine and making my meals on pigeon's meat, mutton and sweetmeats, till the time came when my receipts began to fall due. So every Monday and Thursday I used to go on change and sit in the shop of one or the other of the merchants, whilst the notary and money changer went round to recover the monies from the traders, till after the time of mid-afternoon prayer, when they brought me the amount, and I counted it, and sealing the bags, returned with them to the Khan. On a certain day, which happened to be a Monday, I went to the hammam and thence back to my Khan, and sitting in my own room, broke my fast with a cup of wine, after which I slept a little. When I awoke, I ate a chicken, and perfuming my person, repaired to the shop of a merchant hight Badr al-Din al-Bustani, or the gardener, who welcomed me, and we sat talking a while till the bazaar should open. Presently, behold, up came a lady of stately figure, wearing a headdress of the most magnificent, perfumed with the sweetest of scents, and walking with graceful swaying gait. And seeing me, she raised her mantilla, allowing me a glimpse of her beautiful black eyes. She saluted Badr al-Din, who returned her salutation and stood up and talked with her. And the moment I heard her speak, the love of her got hold of my heart. Presently she said to Badr al-Din, Hast thou by thee a cut piece of stuff woven with thread of pure gold? So he brought out to her a piece from those he had bought of me, and sold it to her for 1,200 dirhams, when she said, I will take the piece home with me and send thee its price. That is impossible, O my lady, the merchant replied, for here is the owner of the stuff, and I owe him a share of profit. Fie upon thee, she cried. Do I not use to take from thee entire rolls of costly stuff, and give thee a greater profit than thou expectest, and send thee the money? Yes, rejoined he, but I stand in pressing need of the price this very day. Hereupon she took up the piece and threw it back upon his lap, saying, Out on thee! Allah confound this tribe of you, which estimates none at the right value. And she turned to go. I felt my very soul going with her. So I stood up and stayed her, and saying, I conjure thee by the Lord, O my lady, favour me, by retracing thy gracious steps. She turned back with a smile and said, For thy sake I return, and took a seat opposite me in the shop. Then quoth I to Badr al-Din, What is the price they ask thee for this piece? And quoth he, 1,100 dirhams. I rejoined, The odd 100 shall be thy profit. Bring me a sheet of paper, and I will write thee a discharge for it. Then I wrote him a receipt in my own handwriting, and gave the piece to the lady, saying, Take it away with thee, and, if thou wilt, bring me its price next bazaar day, or better still, accept it as my guest gift to thee. Allah requite thee with good, answered she, and make thee my husband and lord and master of all. And Allah favoured her prayer. I saw the gates of paradise swing open before me and said, O my lady, let this piece of stuff be now thine, and another like it is ready for thee. Only let me have one look at thy face. So she raised her veil, and I saw a face the sight of which bequeathed to me 1,000 sighs, and my heart was so captivated by her love that I was no longer ruler of my reason. Then she let fall her face veil, and taking up the piece of stuff said, O my lord, make me not desolate by thine remaining, sitting on. Changed till past the hour of afternoon prayer, lost to the world by the love which had mastered me, and the violence of my passion compelled me to make inquiries concerning her of the merchant, who answered me, This is a lady and a rich. She is the daughter of a certain emir who lately died and left her a large fortune. Then I took leave of him and returned home to the Khan, where they set supper before me, but I could not eat for thinking of her, and when I lay down to sleep and donned a change of raiment and drank a cup of wine, and after breaking my fast on some slight matter, I went to the merchant's shop, where I saluted him and sat down by him. Presently up came the lady as usual, followed by a slave girl and wearing a dress more sumptuous than before, and she saluted me without noticing Badr al-Din, and said in fluent, graceful speech, never heard I voice softer or sweeter, Send one with me to take the 1,200 dirhams, the price of the piece. Why this hurry? Asked I, and she answered, May we never lose thee, and handed me the money. Then I sat talking with her, and presently I signed to her in dumb show, whereby she understood that I longed to enjoy her person. And she rose up in hasty with a show of displeasure. My heart clung to her, and I went forth from the bazaar and followed on her track. As I was walking, suddenly a black slave girl stopped me and said, O my master, come, speak with my mistress. At this I was surprised and replied, There is none who knows me here. But she rejoined, O my lord, how soon hast thou forgotten her? My lady is the same who was this day at the shop of such a merchant. Then I went with her to the shroffs, where I found the lady, who drew me to her side and said, O my beloved, thine image is firmly stamped upon my fancy, and love of thee hath gotten hold of my heart from the hour I first saw thee. Nor sleep, nor food, nor drink hath given me aught of pleasure. I replied, The double of that suffering is mine, and my state dispenseth me from complaint. Then said she, O my beloved, at thy house or at mine. I am a stranger here, and have no place of reception save the Khan, so by thy favour it shall be at thy house. So be it. But this is Friday night, and nothing can be done till tomorrow after public prayers. Go to the mosque and pray, then mount thine ass and ask for the Habaniya quarter, and when there, look out for the mansion of Al-Nakib, Barakat, popularly known as Abu Shama the Syndic. For I live there, so do not delay, as I shall be expecting thee. I rejoiced with still greater joy at this, and took leave of her and returned to my Khan, where I passed a sleepless night. Hardly was I assured that morning had dawned when I rose, changed my dress, perfumed myself with essences and sweet scents, and taking 50 dinars in a kerchief, went from the Khan Masrur to the Zuwayla gate, where I mounted an ass and said to its owner, "Take me to the Habaniya." So he set off with me and brought up in the twinkling of an eye at a street known as Darb al-Munkari, where I said to him, "Go in and ask for the Syndic's mansion." He was absent a while and then returned and said, "Alight." "Go thou before me to the house," quoth I, adding, "Come back with the earliest light and bring me home." And he answered, "In Allah's name." Whereupon I gave him a 1/4 dinar of gold, and he took it and went his ways. Then I knocked at the door, and out came 2 white slave girls, both young, high-bosomed virgin, as they were moons, and said to me, "Enter, for our mistress is expecting thee, and she hath not slept the night, long for her delight in thee." I passed through the vestibule into a saloon with 7 doors, floored with party-coloured marbles and furnished with curtains and hangings of coloured silks. The ceiling was cloisonné with gold and corniced with inscriptions emblazoned in lapis lazuli, and the walls were stuccoed with sultana gypsum, which mirrored the beholder's face. Around the saloon were latticed windows overlooking a garden full of all manner of fruits, whose streams were railing and riffling, and whose birds were trilling and shrilling, and in the heart of the hall was a jetting fountain, at whose corners stood birds fashioned in red gold crusted with pearls and gems, and spouting water crystals clear. When I entered and took a seat, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Don't you just love the love stories? Well, there must be a reason why his hand was cut off though. So tune in, I guess, Tuesday or Wednesday with Joanna. Oh, thank you for the heart. Thank you, Tim, Jochen. Daniele was online. That's an old friend, an old colleague from New York City. And lovely Italian. I hope all our Italian friends and families are well. Thanks all for joining in. Much love to you. Enjoy that there are more people out. Stay safe. Stay calm. And remember, going inwards instead of outwards. Make the most of these times. It's important times, and I still have high hopes for humanity and animals and nature. All right, I'm going to let you go. At last they all survived, says Joanna. Joanna, he lost a hand. Do not forget. Let's see where this is going. Thanks all, and have a wonderful, wonderful night. Much love. Bye.